Everyone in Canada has an opinion on this. Your parents say buy. Your landlord says rent. Your coworker who bought in 2018 won't shut up about how much equity he has. And you're sitting there wondering if you're making a massive financial mistake either way. So let's actually do the math. Most people compare a mortgage payment to rent. That is the wrong comparison. A $600,000 home in Canada right now, Toronto, Ottawa, a Vancouver suburb, your mortgage alone is around $3,400 a month at today's rates. That is before property tax, insurance, maintenance, or the $120,000 you needed just to walk in the door. Let's start with what buying actually costs to get started. A $600,000 home needs at least $35,000 down, the minimum 5% on the first $500,000 plus 10% on the rest. But go below 20% and you're paying CMHC mortgage insurance on top of that, up to 4% of the loan. On a $600,000 home, that's another $2,800 added to your mortgage before you've bought a single piece of furniture. Most Canadians can't put 20% down right now. The average takes 5 to 8 years just to save it. And then there are closing costs. Land transfer tax in Ontario, up to 2% of the purchase price. Toronto has its own on top of that, you pay it twice. Legal fees, home inspection, title insurance. On a $600,000 home, budget $25,000 to $30,000 in closing costs alone. You've spent $60,000 to $90,000 before you even sleep in the place. A mortgage isn't your only monthly bill. Property taxes on a $600,000 home average $4,500 to $6,000 a year, about $400 to $500 a month. Home insurance runs another $150 to $200, and the rule of thumb for maintenance is 1% of your home's value every year. On a $600,000 home, that's $6,000 a year or $500 a month. Your true monthly cost of ownership is closer to $4,400 to $4,600 a month. Average rent for a 2-bedroom in Canada's major cities in 2026. Toronto around $2,700, Vancouver $3,000, Ottawa $2,300, Calgary $2,100, Halifax $1,300. Renters don't pay property tax, maintenance, or CMHC insurance. They also don't need $60,000 to $90,000 in a bank account just to start. The monthly cash difference between owning and renting is roughly $500 to $2,000 in most major cities. So renters have $1,500 to $2,000 left over every month that homeowners don't. The question is what they do with it. Most people just spend it. But what if you actually invested it, every single month, into a low-cost index fund inside your TFSA? Over 25 years, the same length as a typical Canadian mortgage at an average 8% annual return, that $1,500 a month becomes something worth paying attention to. See $1,500 a month for 25 years at 8% annual return, about $1.4 million. Meanwhile, that same $600,000 home at Canada's historical 4% appreciation is worth roughly $1.6 million after 25 years. Subtract $350,000 in interest paid, plus $150,000 in cumulative taxes and maintenance. Your net gain lands around $1.00 to $1.1 million. The renter who actually invests ends up in the same neighborhood. Most homeowners don't want to hear that. Economists use something called the price-to-rent ratio to tell when a market favors buying versus renting. Divide the home's purchase price by the annual rent for a comparable place. A ratio below 15 means buying is clearly the smarter financial move. Above 20 means renting makes more sense. Between 15 and 20 is a gray zone where it depends on your personal situation. It's one of the cleanest signals we have for reading a housing market. Here's where Canada's cities actually land right now. Toronto, 30 to 35. Vancouver, 35 to 40. Both deep in renting territory on a pure numbers basis. Ottawa sits around 22 to 26. Calgary, 18 to 22. Halifax, 16 to 20. Both closer to the buy zone. If you're in Toronto or Vancouver, the math is working against you as a buyer. If you're in Calgary or Halifax, buying starts to make real financial sense. Here's what nobody tells you about buying. You lose money for the first several years, mortgage interest, closing costs, CMHC fees. In year one, almost all of your payments go to interest, not equity. The average Canadian needs to stay in their home for 5 to 7 years just to break even versus having rented. Move before that, and you might actually be poorer than if you'd rented the whole time. Now here's where buying gets its edge back. Most Canadians don't actually invest the rent difference, they spend it. A mortgage forces you to build equity whether you're disciplined or not. Every payment chips away at what you owe, slowly at first, faster later. After 25 years, you own an asset outright. Most renters don't end up with $1.4 million in index funds. The math is real, but the behavior usually isn't. Renting gives you something you can't buy, mobility. If your job moves you to another city, you give notice and you go. If your relationship ends, you're not selling a house in a down market. If something better opens up somewhere else, you can take it. Homeowners get stuck, not financially, literally stuck. Can't take the job, can't move, can't adapt. That's an invisible cost nobody puts in a spreadsheet. Here's the scenario renters fear most. If rates drop significantly over the next 2 to 3 years, and markets are pricing in cuts, home prices in Canada's major cities could climb another 15 to 25%. That's another $90,000 to $150,000 on a $600,000 home. Renters who waited get priced out further. Homeowners get a windfall they didn't earn. This is the real reason Canadians panic buy. The fear of being permanently locked out of the market. In Calgary, Edmonton, Winnipeg, and smaller Ontario cities like Windsor, Kingston, or Sudbury, the math is different. Price-to-income ratios are reasonable. A household earning $120,000 can actually qualify for a detached home without betting everything on prices going up forever. The break-even point comes faster. The carrying costs are manageable. In these markets, buying is a legitimate wealth-building strategy. The debate looks very different here than it does in Toronto. Even in Toronto and Vancouver, buying can make sense under specific conditions. You plan to stay for at least 10 years, you can put 20% down without wiping out your savings. You're buying as a long-term family home, not a short-term investment, and you understand that the first 5 years are essentially a sunk cost while you build enough equity to benefit. If those conditions are true for you, buying isn't a bad decision, it's just an expensive one that needs clear eyes. There's a piece of this that doesn't show up in spreadsheets: stability. Painting the walls whatever color you want. Not worrying about your landlord selling the place. Putting down real roots. Having a home that's actually yours. For a lot of Canadians, that's worth a financial trade-off, and that's a completely legitimate reason to buy. Just go in knowing the real cost, not the one your bank tells you. The honest answer is that renting is cheaper in the short term almost everywhere. Buying builds wealth in the long term, but only if you stay put long enough, only if prices keep rising, and only if you don't lose discipline. Renting wins if you invest the difference, but most people don't. Neither is obviously better. The right answer depends on your city, your timeline, your discipline with money, and whether you actually want to own a home or just feel like you should. Don't ask, should I rent or buy? Ask, can I afford to buy and still have an emergency fund? Am I staying in the city for at least 7 years? Can I handle the risk of a 20% price drop without panic selling? If yes to all three, buying probably makes sense. If you're unsure on any of them, renting while you build your position is a strategy, not a failure. Canada's housing market is designed to make you feel like you're falling behind if you're not buying. But falling behind compared to what? A metric that only makes sense if prices never stop going up. Know the real numbers. Make the decision that fits your actual life. Logan out.